Thinking Native, 11 Insights for 2011, with your host Saul Kropman from The Digital Edge.
My name is Jason Xenopoulos, and I'm the Chief Executive of Native.
Jason, you brought these three very diverse companies together. Will it actually work?
It has to work, Saul. No, I think that strategically, there is no doubt that putting Cambrian, Brandish, and Stonewall together makes absolute sense. But I think, as most people who've been involved with mergers know, making them work isn't about strategy. It's about chemistry and it's about culture. So the big challenge now is to make it work on an operational level. But I'm constantly encouraged by the talent, the experience and the enthusiasm of the people that I'm working with, and every new challenge that arises, we seem able to meet. So I'm very optimistic about our ability to unlock the value that is inherent in this merger.
You speak about cultures. Is it a case of these three cultures in the different companies are the same and it's going to be one big mush-up of cultures, or will there be a new culture in Native that is derived from the other three?
I think that ultimately the business will and has already begun to develop its own culture that is, in a sense, a mashup of the three existing cultures. It is the DNA of each of the three companies remains, and they've started to intermingle and create something new. Hopefully, this new culture is a mix of the best of Stonewall, Cambrians, and Brandish. And the reason that I feel positive that will happen is that I think we're all very aware of what the strengths and weaknesses of each of the companies were. I think one of the factors of this merger was that people were very realistic about their own company's shortcomings. And so what we're seeing is a general agreement about the fact that, for example, Cambrians focus on process and measurement is something we want across the group. Stonewall's focus on creativity and design is something we want across the group. Brandish's incredibly enthusiastic, youthful bubble of an energy is something we want to permeate the whole of Native. So we're seeing a new culture arise, but it is very much a mix of the three existing businesses and what was best in each of them.
You also mentioned there's lots of challenges that there might be upcoming. Is there anything that stands out to you that worries you or keeps you up at night?
I think that our biggest challenges are undoubtedly operational. I think that the market is set to grow at the rate we expect it to grow. There's no doubt about the fact that we have the talent and skills within the group to provide clients with best-of-breed services. So basically, we've been dealt a very, very strong hand. We just now need to make sure that we keep our eye on the prize, we keep focused on the right priorities, and we don't allow any of the day-to-day complexities of bringing new people together to get in the way of achieving our overall objective.
What about overlaps of skills? I mean, you've always come out with the message from the start that there's zero overlap of skills. Now that it's probably about 3 months down the line and there's been some interaction between the three companies, does that still exist?
I think that there certainly remains a very clear distinction between the strengths of each of the three companies. And what we're seeing now on every project is the opportunity to throw someone from each business at solving the problem, because we kind of go, oh, well, let's bring this person in because they can add some real social thinking to this, but let's bring so-and-so in from a design perspective. So that does remain very much the case. We're obviously getting to know each of the people in a deeper way and starting to understand what their skills and talents are, and everyone has more that they can offer than we at first would have seen. But that is still very much the case.
For those who don't know you started VWV Interactive back in the mid-90s. I mean, now you're starting another company in a similar sense as VWV. What are the biggest changes you've seen today compared to back in the mid-90s?
Well, I think that the biggest changes in the industry now and then is that in the 90s, the internet was very much a publish and browse medium. And because of that, it was in many ways just another media platform for advertisers, like television, like radio. You had your brochure, you had your TV ad, and you had your website. The real revolution from a marketing point of view, in my mind, came about with the emergence of social media, because with the rise of social media, the internet is no longer simply another media platform. It is, in fact, represents a fundamental shift in the dynamic between brands and consumers. So for me, the big change between the 90s and now is the social web. That's on a global level. On a local level, I think one of the big differences is that in the 90s, we were evolving at very much the same speed as the rest of the world. Broadband hadn't hit the international markets yet, and so we suffered the same constraints that they did in terms of online, which means that we had to innovate and create from scratch along with the other companies out there. Because of a slowdown in broadband connectivity and the take-up of internet connectivity in South Africa, we've fallen behind, several years behind the rest of the world. And while that's very frustrating and very limiting, it does have a positive, and that is that we can now look at what's happening around the world to determine what is going to happen in the local markets, which means we have a roadmap, and that makes life a lot easier. Perhaps it's good to not only talk about what's different between the 90s and now, but also what's the same. And I think what's the same, what remains the same, is that we still wish that marketers and advertisers and clients would embrace digital more than they are. We are still frustrated by the limitations of the medium and the limitations of bandwidth. But overall, I think that we're in a much more fertile space to really do work that can challenge traditional marketing norms.
An observation I've made is that 15 years ago, for example, when you guys did VWV, it was a case of everyone needed a website desperately. It was almost a land grab. Is social media the same at the moment? Everyone wants to be on social media. They don't necessarily understand it, though.
I think that there are definite similarities. I think that there was an enormous amount of hype around the internet in the 90s, and everyone had to have a website. In the same way, there's an enormous amount of hype around Facebook, and everyone needs to be there. But there is also a lot of truth to the hype. So people were right. Everyone ultimately does need a website. I mean, a business without a website today, is not positioning themselves or presenting themselves to clients effectively. In the same way, I think that businesses and brands do need to embrace social media in order to take full advantage of the power of, kind of digital word of mouth, if you like. But we do need to be careful of the hype versus the substance. So not every website that was built in the 90s was the kind of website that a client needed. In the same way, not every social media strategy that brands are taking on board today are appropriate or relevant for their brand. So is it all hype? Definitely not. Does one need to be cautious about how you embrace social media in order to get full value out of it? No doubt.
You also mentioned that we're obviously quite behind compared to the rest of the world. Besides actually looking overseas and seeing what they're doing, which may not necessarily be appropriate because there's different realities there, what else do you think we need to do to catch up?
I think the most important thing is to be focused on users, on usability, and on consumer needs. Because at the end of the day, the technology that takes hold, the applications that become popular, the games that become hits, are those that engage in some way with a basic human need or a human truth of some kind. We don't need to look to the international market in order to understand what's going to work. If we keenly focused enough on our users and what's important to them, and we understand technology and what we can do with it, we're going to hit on the right solutions. It's just easier to be able to look at the successes and failures that have happened internationally in order to, not have to work so much by trial and error.
There's obviously Native's going to be building things like websites. You started building websites 15 years ago. What changes have you seen to websites in themselves besides for just social media?
Well, I think there've been massive changes, both in terms of the way websites are built and the way they are used by consumers. Cambrian's business is based in many ways on some of those changes. Back in the 90s, every website we built was a static website. There were no content management systems in those days. So Cambrian Experience has built a very strong and robust content management system, which allows us to build dynamic websites in a way that allows you to build big, scalable solutions. Another element that I think is going to be really important change in the way websites work is behavioral targeting, something that's also been around since the 90s, but is really only just, I think, starting to take hold now. The ability to customize, personalize, and adapt the browsing experience to the needs of the user. I also think that social dynamics are going to change the nature of websites as well, because there are many social elements that you can add into a website, whether it be sharing or like functionality or whatever else it may be. So I think that all of those changes will continue to evolve the internet experience, and websites will become fundamentally different from what they were in the past.
Sticking on the whole VWV 15 years ago situation, are there any key learnings or mistakes that you've taken out that you wouldn't do again?
I think that there certainly are many things that we learnt from VWV. I think that one of them is that you do need to look beyond the current bubble. You need to look beyond the current craze, and you need to build solutions that are going to work in the long term and deliver tangible results to customers. I also think that in the early days, we had so little view of where the industry was going that it kind of felt like you had to, make hay while the sun shines. I think now we know that digital marketing is here to stay. It may change every 5 minutes, but as long as we move with it, this is a long-term opportunity, and I think we're taking a far more long-term view.
Talking about the industry, what about Native's competitors? I mean, who are they, and why should customers choose Native as opposed to the competitors?
Well, I think the best way to talk about Native's competitors, first of all, let me say that I'm actually less concerned about the competition than I am about growing the overall size of the digital marketing industry. I think that we could compete for the existing pie if we wanted to, but I think that the whole pie is so much bigger that I'd prefer to collaborate with the other digital agencies in order to evangelize the space and grow the opportunity for everyone. Having said that, we are obviously determined to work for the best brands, and that is a very competitive space. So when we talk about our competitors, I think the best way to look at them is by dividing them into 3 categories. The first category are the other so-called full-service digital agencies, and I think that we're better placed than any other full-service digital agency in South Africa for the simple fact that we have far more depth across the broad range of services than any of them do, and that's because we took 3 specialist agencies and put them together. So the other full-service agencies that have grown into full-service agencies organically have had to spread themselves very thin across multiple disciplines. We've been able to take depth in each of the 3 core disciplines and broaden out our offering that way. The second category of competitor that we have are the specialist agencies, the agencies who just focus on social media or just focus, on design. And while I think that they may have, a lot to offer in their respective areas, I think the fact that we have the broader full-service offering allows us to think more strategically across the entire spectrum, and therefore we're a better option for clients. The third category are the traditional agencies who are seeking to become more digital in their offering to clients. And to be honest, I think for the time being, the next 3 to 5 years, we have more to gain. Ourselves as Native and our traditional agency partners have more to gain by collaborating and partnering with one another than we do by competing. I think that traditional agencies bring things to the table that we can't, and I think we bring things to the table that they can't, and I think clients need a combination of those things. There is no doubt, though, over the next 3 to 5 years, the overlap between what we do and what they do will become greater, but I think the industry will change, and time will tell what will become of that competition.
So if you had to pin it down, would you say that the traditional agencies are actually your biggest competitors Not even not right now, but in the next 2 years?
No, I think that our biggest competitors are going to be the new style agencies. I don't consider Native to be a digital agency, nor do I consider us obviously to be a traditional agency. I consider us to be a new kind of agency for a new kind of media market, for a new kind of consumer. And at the moment, I think we're one of almost very few, if not the only company following the model that we are. I think over the next year to 2 years, we're going to see many more companies through mergers, acquisitions, and startups moving into the space of agency for the digital age rather than a digital agency. So I think our competitors haven't necessarily revealed themselves yet.
Well, the thing that interests me, is it success, is it measured by, is it a matter of size, really? You know, Quirkwood just recently got the 110th employee. I know Native will have about 120. Does that make them equal to each other, or is it totally different?
No, I don't think that. I don't think that size has huge bearing on efficacy. I think that there are real advantages to scale for big blue chip clients, where they have big projects that need to be done on short timelines, where they may be spread geographically across the country. Having 3 people in Cape Town makes it very difficult to service a client like that. Having 120 people across 2 cities makes it much easier. Having said that, size alone definitely is not the recipe for success. I think it's the mix of skills that's important. So if I have 120 technologists, but no designers, no social media people, no strategists, I'm not going to have a strong offering. So I think it is the mix of resources and the ability to apply that mix in the most effective way possible, and then scale helps.
What about those specialist agencies? Do you see yourself collaborating with them or bringing those skills further in-house?
I think that we will, wherever we are able to offer our clients best of breed in-house, we'll obviously do it in-house. As soon as there is an agency outside of ourselves who can service a need in a more advanced way than we can, we will seek to collaborate with them. The industry is changing too quickly to be a one-stop shop. I think there's a big difference between a full-service agency and a one-stop shop. A one-stop shop is an anomaly in the digital marketing space, and will become even more so because it is becoming increasingly fragmented and the skills are emerging too quickly. But what full service means is that you're able to address the full spectrum, create holistic and integrated strategies. That doesn't necessarily mean that you need to have deep skills in every single area.
You obviously spent some time in Cannes last year. Were there any things that you learned there that could be possibly the future of the South African digital industries?
I actually try and go to the Cannes Advertising Festival, the Cannes Lions, every year, and I've managed more or less every year for probably the past decade. And it has been a wealth of information and insight for me, because I've been inspired by and motivated by the things I've seen there. I think this year, and probably the 1 or 2 years leading up to it, because these things do evolve over an annual basis. But I think the big trends that I've taken note of were, first of all, integration. That people aren't really talking about digital internationally anymore, because it's become so integrated into the overall marketing mix. So, digital can no longer be a bolt-on to what you're doing, and the best international campaigns don't look at digital as a bolt-on. Digital has become the engine under the hood of every campaign, and in order to do that, it means that a brand strategy must be born digital. And what that means for the local market is that digital agencies need to become more strategic. I think the second big change, and I really started to see it taking hold this year, were digital campaigns moving beyond the digital canvas. So some of the most exciting work was digital work that terminated in some physical activation. So, for example, Chalkbot, which everyone is very familiar with, was basically a technological invention that allowed people to communicate digitally with a physical machine that printed their messages onto the road in chalk. And that was one of many examples. So I think what that means for digital agencies in the local market is that they need to start having the ability to think and execute beyond digital. And that's a big change for South African digital agencies, because most of them have been very pigeonholed into the web, online, mobile, social media space. The third big trend, and for me it's one that while it's been spoken about for many years, really only came to the fore this year, and that is the idea of consumer centricity. The fact that consumers are now the center of the equation. And the reason I say that it's been around for a long time but only starting to take hold is that I think it's really only through the dominance of social media that brands have been forced to understand how important it is to give consumers a voice. And I think what that means really is that we need the ability to help brands to open up, to let go, and to embrace the notion of devolving responsibility from the corporation to the consumer base in terms of building that brand. So just to sum that up, I think that really what those three things add up to is the fact that it is time for digital agencies to grow up, to assume their seats at the lead table, and to graduate from production suppliers to communication partners.
Is there space at the lead table with traditional agencies in South Africa, or will they allow that?
For me, I'm very kind of uncompromising about that aspect of what needs to happen in the South African market. I think there is space for it. I think there's resistance to it, but it is something that is going to happen, that has to happen. Hopefully it will be driven by agencies acknowledging the fact that they need digital thinkers at the table. But if it isn't, it will be driven by clients because they certainly see it. We have some great agency partnerships. We have a great partnership with Publicis, something called Native Inside, that allows us to get involved in birthing strategy digitally. So I think that there is room at the lead table. We may need to push a little bit, but there is room there.
Your second point was going beyond the digital canvas, and you mentioned something like Chalkbot. Those seem to be still quite almost futuristic and far out for even digital agencies overseas. Do you think we'll see clients that are interested in things like that locally?
I think we definitely will. I think that selling that kind of work is always a challenge. In fact, we've come up with a couple of projects in the last couple of months that have real world activations very much at their core. And in some instances, we've gotten clients to buy it, and in other instances, they haven't had the courage to push that far. So I think that in some ways, campaigns that have both online and offline components are even more relevant in the South African market, where you have a smaller consumer base online. So clients who often look at online and kind of go, well, there are not that many people who are going to see this banner or this campaign, can look at a campaign that stretches beyond the digital canvas and go, it does its job online, but hey, people who don't have access to the internet are going to see this too. So I think that it certainly has relevance for the local market. Hopefully, clients will be brave enough to buy that kind of work.
So we're kind of going to see work moving from just kind of flashy banners to advertorial, kind of almost create your own experience work.
I think that's true. I think that there is a big shift from interruption marketing to branded entertainment, branded content. And just because a banner is online doesn't mean that it's not interruption marketing. In fact, it may be the lowest level of interruption marketing. So we are going to definitely see a move away from that kind of work to something that is more integrated and more experiential.
Let's move on to customer centricity. That seems kind of a forum for allowing whingers to complain on the internet and then you solve their problem. Is there more to it than that?
There's far more to it. I think the first thing is that we can call them whingers, but they're not really whingers. They're customers with a problem. Whether that's a problem that you want to hear or not, the fact is that they have something to say about it, and if they don't say it to you, they're going to be saying it to other people. You at least have the opportunity by engaging with them online to determine whether or not you want to try and get them to feel better about your brand. You may decide that they're just infinitely malcontent and they're going to carry on being unhappy forever, and in those cases you may choose not to engage or intervene, but you can't ignore what people are saying about your brand. But I think customer centricity is about far more than that. YouTube, fan fiction, and the whole user-generated content revolution has led to a point where a huge percentage of the brand collateral that any brand has online was created by someone other than themselves. If you resist it, it simply means that the chasm between the brand content that you put out there and the brand content that other people put out there is going to be bigger. If you try to somehow facilitate or mediate that relationship, to let go, to open up, to give consumers the tools to talk about, play with, and mold your brand in a way that you feel comfortable with, then all that other user-generated brand collateral that's out there is more likely to be in line with the brand you would like to build as well.
Is there not a danger there, though? You're kind of almost pushing back against an advancing wall of water of people who are unhappy with your brand, and you're not willing to change your brand just quite yet.
Well, I think there's the big difference between true consumer centricity and the bullshit that people have been talking for years. I think that what companies like Unilever and P&G are starting to understand, that putting the consumer at the center of the brand, saying we no longer want to be the biggest shouters, we want to be the biggest listeners, doesn't simply mean asking people to tell you what they think. It means asking people to tell you what they think and re-engineering your business in a way to do something about that feedback. Because if you're opening up the floodgates to consumer feedback and you're not doing anything with it, you're going to create even more frustration. So consumer centricity is about saying we are creating a reactive and adaptive brand that is able to engage with customers and change according to their needs.
So if a client came to you and said, we want to listen to what people are saying, but we're not really ready to change, what would you say to them?
I would say that that their strategy is misplaced, and that it would create more harm than good. If I come to you and I say, Saul, how are you doing? And then I walk away before you've told me, I've done more damage than if I'd never asked you how you were in the first place.
Let's talk about trends for a moment. What are you looking out for, and why are you looking out for those trends?
Okay, so I think that for me the big trend that I continue to watch is the ongoing influence of social media on the shifting dynamic between consumers and brands, because I think that this notion of how far to open up, how much to let go, and how to engage with consumers in a way that is positive for the brand is key. So I'm watching keenly where that's going. The second key trend for me is the rise of behavioral targeting. I think in the 90s, if we track all the way back to something like Firefly in the 90s, which was a recommendation engine that preceded Amazon's recommendation engine, or a company like Broadvision, people were talking about personalizing the web experience back then. But if you look at any of the major banks or retailers today, you'll find that they're doing almost nothing in terms of matching content and product to consumer needs. We're starting to see some great new technologies and brands, companies like Baynote, who are offering technologies to allow us to do that more effectively. I think Google has also taught us about the power of collective intelligence and how to take on board what we learn about the group and apply that to the individual, and that's made the so-called artificial intelligence behind behavioral targeting that much easier to deal with. I think a third big trend for me is the continued move from interruption marketing to branded entertainment. I think that it is becoming increasingly clear that the best way to avoid being PVR'd into oblivion is to build your brand into the fabric of the content that your consumers choose to engage with. Whether it be the Gatorade campaign that won a Grand Prix at Cannes last year, or whether it be Nike Plus that won campaign of the decade some years ago, whether it be branded entertainment or branded utilitainment, whether it be online or offline, there is a definite move away from interruption marketing to building your brand into some sort of value exchange with clients. Perhaps another trend for me is really some of the revolutionary changes that are taking place in the marketing of mainstream entertainment, so movies, music, games, because I think that in many ways it's a precursor to some of the strategies and concepts that we'll see hitting some of the less sexy areas of the industry. Whether you talk about the ARGs, for example, that 42 Entertainment has built for Dark Knight Returns or Halo 3, amazing alternate reality gaming experiences that have really pushed the notion of flash mobbing and collective gameplay to new levels. really some of the exciting stuff that I'm starting to see is in the area of, for example, music videos, a medium, a marketing medium, because music videos are basically marketing songs, a medium that was dying on MTV, dying on television because it became stale and staid. And if you start to look at what a music video director like Chris Milk is now doing online with projects like the Johnny Cash Project or the Wilderness Downtown, we're starting to see music videos become a new interactive and participative medium that I think is going to add a whole new dimension to marketing music. So I think that game marketing, movie marketing, and music marketing is in many ways pointing in the direction of some of the great marketing strategies going forward.
Going back to native, what's the roadmap for the next year or two, for that matter?
The roadmap for the immediate term is to bed down the merger, is to get all three companies working synergistically. We're moving everybody in Joburg into one office as of the middle of February, and that's going to have a huge impact. So the short term is really just about really unlocking the value that this merger has made possible. Stage 2 will be about injecting the additional skills into the collective that we need in order to offer clients an even more advanced service. So starting to offer the kind of brand strategy and brand custodianship skills that haven't traditionally sat within the digital industry. Beyond that, I think it's really a case of using what we'll then have, which is I think, one-of-a-kind marketing machine to innovate the local market, the local industry, and provide clients with solutions that they couldn't get anywhere else.
Thinking Native is a part of the Making of Native, a 4-month journey into the making of South Africa's newest full-service agency. For more insights with Native's leading thinkers, visit us on www.native.co today or follow us on @NativeSpeak.